In this unit, we're going to be talking about pricing, and pricing is very complex, and there's a lot that goes into pricing. You'll learn about this when you take your decision-making classes, but for now, we're going to look at some concepts, look at some strategies, review some different companies who do different strategies and tactics to get consumers to buy their goods and services, to give you a feel for the complexity. So we want to start the pricing conversation by reviewing what we learned in Chapter 1. Way back in the very beginning of the class, we talked about terms like satisfaction and value and the exchange of something of value. This now comes to really a head when we talk about pricing. If I'm going to buy something, I'm going to exchange something of value, which would be money, for that product or service, and then I'm going to evaluate if I believe that that product or service was equal to the money that I spent. So this is where price comes into play. Price can be an enhancer, it can add prestige to a product, or it can be a detractor if I feel like I paid too much and I wasn't satisfied because I don't think the product or service was the right value. I'm going to have that cognitive dissonance. So to define what price is what's given up in an exchange for something of value. That's important. And again, we have to make that connection between value and satisfaction. Customers are interested in a reasonable price for something in this transaction that will give them some value that they perceive, and then they would be satisfied. Let's talk a little bit about some terminology that you need to understand as we're going through the pricing conversation. The terms are revenue and profit. Revenue is all the money that's brought in by the product and services. Then you pay for all of your expenses. That would be lights, that would be building, that would be taxes, that would be your payroll, all the things, the variable cost of the components that go into the product or service. After you minus all of those expenses, what's left over is profit. So if you think about it in your own life in terms of getting a paycheck, I get a paycheck today and I pay my mortgage, I pay my car insurance, I pay for groceries, I pay for lights. What's left over is my profit, so to speak, and money I have to maybe go to a movie or go out on the town. Those are added features after I paid for all my expenses. So what influences our prices? Well, one could be the new products. As you get more and more new products that compete or that can substitute, that will decrease costs. The availability of bargain price, private generic brands, changes. When you have the exact same product on the shelf and the consumer feels the value's the same, they will go for the lower price. Cutting strategy to maintain or regaining market share. This is really important, especially as we get into that high growth mature stage when more and more competition is coming into the marketplace. There is a pressure and is felt by all parties either to add more so there's more value or to decrease that price. And then the internet is easy to compare. I have an app that I can click a code on my app and it goes to looking for the best bargain out there. Am I paying the right place in the store, or can I go out online? So how do we figure out revenue? Well, revenue is figured out by price times sales for each unit. So if I'm making 5 candy bars and I sold them for $1, that's $5 of revenue, and then you minus the cost to get profit. So this is where companies, and when we get into their decision-making process, you will see how those expenses can really make or break your profit. You do have to spend money to make money. We have to have expenses in advertising to tell people we're here and what to do with our product. We have to hire salespeople to sell the product. We have to have people in accounting to process bills and pay bills. So you do have costs that need to be done, but we can keep those costs in check as it relates to how much money we're making on our product. There's also different concepts talking about scope. When we talked about distribution of an intense versus exclusive, that's what we're talking about. If it's out there everywhere, I may only make 2 cents on every unit, but if I'm selling millions of units a day, that makes up for it versus I may make 10 cents on an exclusive, but I only make 100 of them a day for sales. So having that conversation of intensive distribution also plays into this conversation of pricing, revenue, and profit. Pricing objectives must be specific, attainable, and measurable in order to survive in this culture. So we divide our pricing objectives into 3 different categories: profit-oriented, sales-oriented, and status quo. Profit-oriented prices include profit maximization, satisfactory products, and target return on investment. A discussion of how each one of these are incorporated will follow. Although profit maximization aims at setting prices for a large total revenue, it does not always signify unreasonably high prices. Both price and profit depend on the competitive environment and the product's perceived value. Remember, too, that a firm cannot charge a price higher than the product's perceived value. If they do, you have cognitive dissonance. Satisfactory profits represent a reasonable level of profits that is consistent with the level of risk an organization faces. The most common profit objective is the target ROI, or return on total assets. It represents a firm's effectiveness in generating profits with the available assets that they have. The higher the firm's ROI, the better the firm is. ROI puts a firm's profit in perspective by showing profits relative to investment. So what we're looking at is how much money we're making against how many assets or what we have, and is that comparable? Sales-oriented pricing objectives includes market share and sales maximization. What the market share is there's so much being sold, there's so much demand of what people are willing to pay and to purchase. And out of that whole demand, if you look at a global world, what percent do we get for sales for our company? So it's the company's product sales as a percentage of total industry sales. So looking here at coffee, if I have a coffee where there's 100 million tons being sold in a month, what percentage of that 100 million tons does Folgers have, does Starbucks have, and does Maxwell have? That's considered market share. When we look at sales maximization, what we're looking at are short-term objectives. We're looking at increasing our sales and ignoring profits and trying to get as much into that market share and as much into the environment so we can either sell off inventory. So we may have a fire sale, we may have lower our prices, maybe add buy one, get one free to try to get our sales moving for one reason or another. Status quo pricing really is very generic. This is where we look at where the competition is and meet them. We maintain existing prices because we believe our price says something about our product and product quality. So when we're looking at these three different categories of objectives, profit-oriented, we're looking at really how much can we make, how much more can we make, and how does that relate to what we already have or own, as we refer to assets. Sales-oriented, we're looking at market share and sales maximization, really just selling our product and get our product in the hands of the consumer. And then status quo, just maintaining an existing price. So let's talk about some examples. Profit orientation is really looking at maintaining a profit. So maybe this is where you take the Nikes, for example. They have offshore production facilities where it costs very little to produce, but they have an elevated price of $100, $200 per shoe. So they're making a large amount of money based on what it costs to produce and how much it costs to get in the hands of the consumer. That's profit-oriented. When you look at sales-oriented, what we're looking at is selling a whole bunch. We may not make a lot on any one unit, but we're selling a whole bunch. You look at the Walmarts of the world, the JCPenney's of the world. These are the types of industries that have an intensive or a selective / intensive sort of distribution. They're trying to gain market share and they're really trying to get in the hands of the consumer. It might also be an example if they have a new product. For example, the new Mountain Dew beverage that came out for breakfast. What they're trying to do is get their product in the hands of the consumer, so they're going to put it at a low introductory price and they're going to get it out there and try to get a whole bunch off of the shelf so people buy into that brand and want to consume more. Status quo, on the other hand, would be a Pepsi, a Coke. When you go to the store and you take a look at the prices, there might be a sale, but most of the time those products are exactly the same price. They know that their market share is set. Pepsi and Coke, they're not going to gain more of the cola market share than they have right now. So maintaining that price, maintaining their image, and offering new products will increase their pricing and their profit. So we have to talk a little bit about economics, and we have to discuss what demand is and what supply is. I talked earlier about demand, and what demand is the amount of units that are sold. How many units do customers want and how much are they willing to buy? Supply, on the other hand, is how many units there actually are to purchase. So if the demand equals 100 and the supply equals 100, woohoo, we're in good shape for our capitalism. However, it could be reversed. We could have our demand to be 100 but the supply to be 50, or the supply to be 150 and demand to be 50. So this is where we have to understand what is the demand for our product and how much should we produce so we don't have a whole bunch left in inventory that's not being sold. So this is an example of demand for cookies, and you can see here that at $3 a package of cookies, there's 35 people that want it. At $2.50, 50 people would want that. At $1, 120. So as the price goes down, more people will purchase it. Here's the supply side. At $3, they're going to produce 140 and so on. So you get this nice little curve of a supply of what will be produced. So here's a great example of a crazy little thing called Zuzu Pets. When this came out, for some reason there was a high demand and a low price. And when you look here, they're actually selling this $2 little toy from anywhere from $45 to $100. And then I just want to show you some of the conversation that was being had in 2009 around the Zuzu Pets, where they're priced normally at $8. Many people got them and sold them at a higher price in some of those gray market areas like eBay, and that's where other people raised and increased the price. So this is where when you have supply being low and demand being high, if it is, for example, in this case, the right toy and they want it for their Christmas present for their child, some parents are willing to pay many times more than the product is worth just so they have that correct present. When you have the exact supply and exact demand, you have the right amount to be sold and everybody's happy. If I have too much demand and not enough supply, there's a shortage and then the price increases because more people want it and are willing to pay more. If you have too much supply and not enough demand, that lowers the price because consumers don't want as much at that price point. And so the only way for a producer to get rid of the product is to decrease the price. I want to talk a little bit about elasticity of a demand versus inelasticity. The elasticity of demand, or how elastic a product is, really depends on the amount of substitute products. So for example, if I go to the vending machine and I want a Diet Coke and a Diet Coke is out, I'll easily substitute a Diet Pepsi, a water. That's a highly elastic product. There's a lot of substitutes at that price point. I'm not super invested in that product. I can easily be satisfied with a water or a Diet Dr. Pepper. Inelastic, however, is I'm not going to be satisfied with anything but that product. So for example, if I need brain surgery, I'm not going to go to a pediatrician. I'm going to go to a brain surgeon. And so there is no substitute for that brain surgeon in my mind if I need brain surgery. So some things are highly inelastic, some things are highly elastic, and this is a spectrum of different items. You can want something but are willing to substitute at a certain price. So maybe, for example, I want a certain computer, but at a lower price I just give up a little bit, I may substitute. So pricing and how well we are able to make decisions based on price is determined by how elastic that product is. So just to review, the factors that affect elasticity are available of substitute products, price relative to purchasing power, product durability, how long it'll last, a product's other uses, and the rate of inflation. Now, yield management systems are used widely in a number of industries, and this is a technique based on a mathematical format that will set prices based on demand. The airline industry uses yield management systems, and we know this because we like to use them. Sometimes we wait to the last minute to book because we know we're going to get a